Hello, we are still in lesson 3 entitled Plan the Project. We are still in the longest and most technical lesson in this training. This time we're going to talk about how we plan our resources. What are resources in our project? People are a resource. Materials are a resource. Equipment are a resource. Software are a resource. Computers, printers, paper, supplies, facilities, buildings, Wi-Fi, raw materials, tools, equipment, all these are resources. So basically in a project there are two types of resources. Human resources, that's people, and non-human resources, also called physical resources, that's everything else. Once we are talking about human beings, it's worth noting that projects are managed by people for people. I repeat, projects are managed by people for people. So we need to make sure that we value and empower people, especially those who are internal stakeholders within our project environment, within the business, but also leverage on external resources. And this could be people and also physical resources. Because sometimes in a project, we need to buy materials, we need to buy supplies, we need to get people from outside, we need to get experts from outside, you need to get raw materials, you need to get paper, Wi-Fi, all these things. So how do we plan and manage all these resources? Again, as we've been seeing in the previous videos, when we talk about planning, we've talked about scope planning, we've talked about schedule planning. We always start with the predictive, with a resource or with a management plan, a subsidiary of the project management plan. What is the resource management plan? What does it contain? It's a component or a subsidiary of the project management plan, and will describe how our project resources will be acquired, identified, managed, controlled, and even released, improved upon to ensure that we successfully deliver our project. What are the components of that plan? Number one, the resources that we've identified will be adequate, will be necessary for our project. Then what strategies, what are we going to do to acquire them? Sometimes we'll be starting a project and we are creating a project charter. We need to acquire resources right there from around us or from outside. We call this pre-assignment. That before the project even starts, we've already assigned certain resources, already signaled or identified certain resources and how we're going to acquire them. It could be an engineer from Japan that is very competent, world recognized with the right expertise. But this person is so well sought after that if we don't move quickly, we'll lose them. So as we're putting together a charter with our sponsor, say, okay, we need to get that person. We'll get human resources, we'll get the legal people, we'll get the procurement people to start chasing after this important resource that has been pre-assigned to the project. Some resources will need to negotiate with various stakeholders internally within our business to get them, people and physical resources. Some resources will get them from outside our organization, working with our procurement and legal colleagues. Next is the people that we have identified that we are going to acquire. What role will they occupy? Are they going to, do we get a product owner from outside or from inside? And who is going to play the role of the sponsor? Who is going to play the role of a marketing, lead in our project? Communications expert, technician, and so on. What role and what is their job? What are they going to do? Their responsibilities. When you are managing a project, it's as if you are managing a company. The similar mindset, similar things that you do. It's like now you are setting up an HR or a resource management team in your project. And sometimes you'll be working with people from HR to assign roles and responsibilities. You'll be developing job descriptions. You'll be developing RACI charts where responsibilities, accountabilities, consult or inform positions are already allocated. Now we need to also define on the people their roles, their responsibilities, their level of authority to take decisions, to sign checks, their competencies. What quality of people do we need? The number of years of professional experience, their background, their expertise, their mobility. All these considerations need to be taken into account. Then we need to develop, as part of our resource planning, the project organizational chart, similar to when we are setting up a business or a corporation. You have a company organizational chart with the CEO at the top of the tree and other reporting lines or reporting positions. Here with the project organizational chart, you, the project manager, you will be the CEO. You'll be like the CEO. You'll be the top dog, the top of the tree. And other managers, supervisors, team leads, and support staff will be cascaded in that hierarchy. Very interesting. Project organizational chart. Then you need to describe how you would define, select, manage, and release resources when they are no longer needed. And please make sure that you abide by your company's resource policies, code of conduct, and also the PMI code of ethics. Training. What plans and strategies do you have for training? The job training, virtual training, formal training, informal training, and so on. Because training is necessary to improve the competencies, that is, the skills and the abilities of people. In the resource management plan, we'll also talk about team development. This is now the entire team. Training is part of development, but also certain activities to ensure that the environment, the morale, the dynamics of the team is improved. Another key aspect of the resource management plan is resource controls. How are you going to make sure that physical resources are available at the right level, the right quantity and qualities as required throughout the project? And lastly but not least, A reward and recognition plan, probably the most important aspect. And we're going to see this when we do lesson 4. Reward and recognition. These are very important tools to motivate people so that they can perform better. Everybody likes a birthday party. Everybody. I don't care if you're 100 years old and you've had 99 previous birthday parties. When people gather together to wish you happy birthday, to buy presents, and to sing to your honor, and they all gather, they all eat, you are all happy. But why is it that in our projects, in our workplaces, we are bosses, we are superiors, we have people under us? Why is it that we never buy them presents? We buy presents for people in our families, but the people that will spend most times working, they even work for us. They make us a great performing manager. We don't buy presents for them. We hardly recognize their work. That makes us bad leaders. The next is to assign resources. One of the tools that we can use is to create job descriptions. We call them text-oriented format. A job description is simply if you go to Google and type, I want to work as a remote project manager. You are looking for opportunities or for openings for remote project managers. What you will get are job descriptions. They'll tell you what the opening is, the salary, the purpose of the job, and they'll give you responsibilities, qualifications, competencies, certifications. So too in all your positions in your project, you need to create job descriptions. Second tool is using a RACI chart. A RACI chart is a very good chart, which is used to assign people to certain responsibilities, certain accountabilities. But in allocating or assigning resources, consider technical, managerial, and certain soft skills. Also consider their attitude, their location, their mobility, their experience, their knowledge, and so on. Another tool is resource calendars. And these days we have some very smart calendars. Calendars are good because they help to document when resources are available, both people and physical resources. And they will specify when and for how long these resources will be available in a project. I'd already mentioned some of the resource assignment tools. I've talked of project organizational chart. I've talked of job descriptions that are made in a text format. The most important, and where you get a lot of questions in the exam, is a resource assignment tool called Responsibility Assignment Matrix, or a RACI chart. RACI is just an acronym. It stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consult, Informed. This is a very powerful tool we use in hybrid and predictive projects, because for every task that we identified in schedule, we need to assign a team member or some team members to that task. They are responsible. They are the ones to perform the work. So every task should have at least one responsible person. Every task should have one person that is accountable. That's the person to make sure that it's properly done. They will check, they review the work once it's done or once it's during the time that it's been done. So the R and the A's are mandatory for each task. Some tasks you need to assign a consult party, somebody who is there to be able to provide some valuable input, maybe because they have done it before or they just have some expertise or knowledge, or they need to be consulted because their own task might depend on it. Then also, I is not mandatory. Inform. Somebody who needs to be kept in the loop that this work is being done. So that's a RESI chart. Very, very important tool. A tool that makes sure that we have less conflicts, less chaos, and less disorganization when it comes to our work. Are you using this? If not, please start using it tomorrow. Powerful tool, especially when you have a huge team, sub teams, when you have people working from home remotely. Now let's look at a question that uses a RESI chart. We have to our left a RESI matrix with various activities and various roles: project manager, consultant, architect, contractor, and client. Now there are what? 6 activities to our left. Define functional and aesthetic needs, assess risk, define performance requirements, create design, execute construction, and approve construction work. And under those roles, we have RACI assigned. Now, on the right, there are a few questions. First question: who assesses their risk? Who assesses their risk? Who assesses their risk? So study the RACI matrix chart properly. Know what R means, accountable means, RACI is down there at the bottom. And tell us who assesses the risk. Well, assess risk is the second activity. So who is the one responsible, who actually does the job? Is the consultant. So the answer to the first question is consultant. Number 2, who provides valuable information during construction execution? Go to execute construction. Who is the one providing valuable information? If you are providing valuable information, what are you doing? That's already key. Giving you a tip right there. Who provides valuable information during construction execution? There are 2 people, the architect and the consultant. If you are consulted, you are there to provide valuable or expert information. Number 3, who is kept in the loop during construction execution? Who is kept in the loop during construction execution? Same activity. Who is kept in the loop? None other than the client is informed, kept in the loop. And lastly, number 4, who makes sure that performance requirements are properly defined? Define performance requirements activities. The third one, who makes sure that it's properly defined? Who makes sure? Of course, the person who makes sure is not a person doing a job, but the person who is accountable. So that will be the project manager. So how many did you get? Hope you got all 4. If not, review it, correct it so that you don't get it wrong if you are in front of a similar question. Next, Which of these are true? Choose several. This is from an adaptive resource planning perspective. Which of these are true? First question. Teams self-organize to distribute work. True or false? Next, adaptive teams never have a leader. True or false? Adaptive teams never have a leader. Next, team members are a mix of generalists and specialists. Next, team members should be T-shaped. True or false? So let's look at the damage. All are true except the second one. Adaptive teams do have a leader. It's called the Scrum Master or Team Lead or Agile Coach or Facilitator. Right, let's keep moving. There will be situations where we need to get resources from outside the environment, outside the business. But in doing so, we need to consider the impact, the cost, the time, the quality. Do we need expertise? Is there going to be a steep learning curve? Do we have the resources? Do we have the money? And would outsourcing some of the activities allow the other team members to focus? So this is what we call a make or buy analysis. Make or buy or even borrow analysis. Once we do the analysis, we'll come up with a decision that will be part of our procurement strategy. Now, as we put together a procurement strategy, you will work with your organization's procurement department, sometimes called supply chain management or contracts department. Also with finance and probably with legal. They'll normally have a list of qualified vendors. Okay? And they'll have templates. They'll have procedures, policies, the type of contracts, and so on. And these are aspects which we need to take into consideration when we're coming up with a procurement strategy. So your procurement strategy will be part of your procurement management plan, which is a subsidiary of the project management plan. Your procurement management plan would contain the type of resources that you are outsourcing or getting from outside. Okay. Next, the strategy or the ways in which you're going to do your procurement. Sometimes you have some sort of activity or roadmap. I need to say this. Sometimes we minimize the fact that the procurement department has a lot of work to do. And we have a lot of procurement activities. Certain things are going to be coming locally. Some will come in through the sea, some through the air. Sometimes we are dealing with law enforcement, customs, and other government officials. So it's very important that we create some sort of procurement activity planner that will ensure that our procurement colleagues, our logistics colleagues, because sometimes we need to get drivers or vans or transportation, our finance colleagues are aware of these activities when we're expecting them. The procurement management plan will also describe the process of obtaining and evaluating bids from prospective sellers. What is a seller? Let me just tidy up this aspect. A seller is the party that we are going to deal with when we are doing procurement, the external company. We, the people doing the project, we are the buyer. Okay, we have the money. We have the money, credit card, so we are the buyer. So a seller can be a vendor, a contractor, or a service provider. And we are their customer because they are going to supply goods and services to us. The procurement management plan will also contain the procurement documents that we are going to use. You also have the procurement policies, which are going to specify certain things that we could be doing, or certain things that we can't do when we're doing procurement in the company. Also, describe the type of contracts that we are going to use. Now, when we talk about procurement documents, note that the procurement department, they are the process owners of the procurement process. So you'll be working with them in coming up with your procurement strategy, procurement plan, and they'll help you in your procurement activities for your project. So being process owners, they already have certain standardized templates that they are going to use to help you in your project. Now let's look at some of these documents. You have the expression of interest, the request, invitation for negotiation, request for information, request for quotation, request for proposal, and so on. What's a statement of work? Let's look at this procurement document. The statement of work. The statement of work will come from our work breakdown structure dictionary, and it should be the detailed description of the work that the seller needs to perform. Please make sure that this statement of work is very complete. Whether you are the one doing it or somebody else in the project management team is doing it, or outside that team, it should be reviewed by the project management team, reviewed by the project manager, reviewed by the procurement folks before it's sent out to the sellers. So outline the scope, key requirements, deliverables, timelines, payment terms, location, technical details, so that the prospective seller understands fully what is expected of them. So note that this document is being sent out to outside parties. You sending it, your project manager, you are representing your company. So make sure that you are representing your company in the best possible light. Next is a request for quotation. Request for quotation. What is a quotation? When we're doing quotations, we are trying to get a price. So a request for quotation is a formal document where we try and get price quotes from potential vendors or sellers. So you can compare offers and select the best one. We also have invitation for bid. Now, invitation for bids is when we are sending out invitation to say, okay, we have this work that we want to do in our project. Who out there can do it? This allows sellers to say, oh, to express interest. Say, yes, I can do it. I have experience and all that. Then you have requests for information. Now, a request for information is a formal document sent out to our prospective sellers to get more information about a particular product, service, or work that needs to be done. Why do we do that? Because sometimes we don't know properly or in full what is involved in the work. I'll give you an example. Some time ago, when I was in the corporate world, we had to install marine radar. I didn't know anything about marine radars, neither did my project managers. But once we went on the internet, we looked at some key suppliers, we sent out a request for information for them to tell us how marine radar works. And that way we could make a decision to move forward. Then there's a request for proposal. You are requesting for what? Proposal. What are proposal? So a request for proposal is something that we announce publicly, indicating that we are seeking sellers to participate in the work. Request for proposal. In this request for proposal, we'll be stating out the purpose and the scope of the work. That way, we can now get, responses from our sellers. Then we have expression of interest. This is a reply to an invitation for bid from the seller. So everything else is from the buyer to the seller, but the expression of interest from the seller to the buyer, showing that, okay, we can do it. We are interested in supplying this thing for you or doing this work for you. Okay. So these are the procurement documents you should be aware of. Now, if you are an organization or the work that you are doing is in a highly sensitive or highly regulated industry or the government, or sometimes it's a technical or specially work involved, you can use the request for proposal, bidders conferences, and other formal processes to ensure that the prospective vendors have a clear understanding and a common understanding of the work. What is a bidders conference? This is a meeting or seminar or conference organized by the buyer to ensure that prospective sellers can fully understand what is involved. You do presentations, you take them around the site if he has already a site that is already booming with activities. And they will also have an opportunity to ask questions about the work. It's also called a vendor conference, a pre-bid conference, or a contractor conference. I've had the pleasure of this, so I know exactly what it's all about. So work with your procurement department to get this going. Now let's talk about the list of criteria that enables us to select external resources who are capable, who have the skills, the competencies, the experience to do the job. What are the things that we need to look at? Number one, the overall or life cycle cost. Yes, we have the project cost, but we should also think about the product management costs, like maintenance, operating, and support costs. Because if you can get a seller that can do both, then they'll be able to give you a discount on the product or the project side. Okay. Because they know that they'll make more money on the maintenance and support side, repairs and all that. Next is, okay, let me say this. Life cycle costs or overall cost is also called total cost of ownership or cradle to grave cost. Cradle to grave. Next, how best does the seller understand the need or the work involved? Okay. How best do you understand the need? Next, technical capability and technical approach. Some jobs are technical, so you need to evaluate the seller's approach, their plan, the way they will manage technical things, their technical capacity, their technical ability. Next is their management approach. The work that they are doing, what sort of management style are they bringing on board? Then warranty and guarantees. If it's something that involves parts, something gets bad, would they be able to do it? What sort of confidence do they have on their work, on their product? Now, financial capacity. Does the seller have deep pockets? Because sometimes the work that is involved needs maybe the purchase of some materials, some uniforms, some equipment before you start, paying their invoices. Make sure you're dealing with people who are well structured. You're not dealing with fly-by-night cowboys. Their production capacity and future interests. Don't just focus on your current capacity. Also think of future capacity. Let's say you are getting flour and you need 200 kilograms per week. What if your production capacity increases to 800 kilograms? Would the seller be able to produce that? Their business size and the type of business doesn't match yours. Their past performance, their references, and check those references. You might be lying. Intellectual property rights. Intellectual property rights. What is intellectual property rights? What's intellectual property? There are certain jobs that involve a lot of brain power. So intellectual property rights protect this creativity that comes from the brain, inventions, artistic work, designs. You don't want those rights to be violated. So there are different types of intellectual property rights: patents, trademarks, copyrights, industrial designs, trade secrets. Make sure that you protect them. Proprietary rights, things that belong to you. Proprietary. Proprietary rights, also called property rights. These are rights that show that you are the legal owner of a tangible or intangible property. Now, based on what is most important to you or relevant to your project, you select the key ones or the most relevant ones for your project. Then you use a template like this one to spread the weight of 100% to this criteria. In this particular example, my technical approach and management approach and cost are most important, so I give 30% and 20%. But everything should tally up to 100%. And then you rate and score each seller. Now, let's say you are rating over 20. Needs knowledge, maybe that person rated 15, another person 12, another person 13. You multiply that 15 by 15% to get a score, and so on, until you get a winner. Sometimes there's a tie. You might need to look at maybe the criteria which weighs more for you, or you might invite them in for a chat, an interview, face-to-face discussion. This is what is called a proposal evaluation. And make sure that you are not doing this alone. You create a proposal evaluation committee made up of representation from the project, number 1, representation from procurement, number 2, representation from finance, because they're the ones who will be paying invoices, number 3, and maybe representation from legal, and maybe some other parties. So that way, you have an open, fair, equitable, objective proposal evaluation committee. Because procurement has a lot of money, and I know people who've lost their jobs because they didn't handle procurement well. They were taking kickbacks from contractors. You don't want to do that. Also, your procurement department will have a list of qualified vendors that have passed through an assessment process, and they have worked with the organization, or they have been found qualified to work with the organization. So you might need to use them. But it doesn't restrict you. It shouldn't restrict you from using them. Sometimes there are some good new starters out there who can give you quality work, sometimes at a very good competitive price. So always look out there. Be free to look out in the market. As part of your procurement strategy, the type of contract you use is going to be very important. What is a contract? Well, before we define a contract, let's define what an agreement is. Because an agreement is an umbrella term. An agreement is any intention or communication between two or more parties to work together, to even marry, to even go into business, to even invest. That's an agreement. And there are different types of agreements. A handshake can be an agreement. An email can be used as an agreement. A memorandum of understanding, a memorandum of agreement, a letter of intent, a letter of agreement, a service level agreement, a contract, and so on. Agreements can be formal or informal, can be legally binding or not. So let's differentiate between agreements and contracts. So what is a contract? A contract is a formal agreement that is both mutually and legally binding. So when you are in a project, you are going to work with another company, my brother or my sister, use a contract, okay? It's formal, legal, mutually binding. Contracts are very good because they are legally binding. They give structure and objectivity to your working relationship with your sellers. They have various aspects, risk, terms and conditions, and they can be tailored for your particular work. So you determine your need, you make a request out there, you get proposals, and you can get into a contract. What are the various types of contracts? For the PMP certification exam, the first type of contracts are what we call the cost reimbursable or cost plus contracts. These are preferred by sellers and not by buyers. On what basis do we use such contracts? When we are expecting significant changes in the scope of work, use such a contract. There are three types. Cost plus fixed fee, where we only pay the seller for work that we have allowed. So use a work authorization system and authorize the work so they'll be paid on a fixed fee basis, usually calculated as a percentage of the initial estimated project cost. Then you have cost plus incentive fee. When you are trying to achieve a certain level of quality, it could be time, it could be performance related, you can incentivize or motivate the seller by giving them a little percentage that if they meet that performance level or that performance requirement, then they'll get maybe 5% more. Then you have cost plus award fee, similar to cost plus incentive fee, but only that the majority of the fee is based on the seller meeting some subjective performance criteria, which should be defined and incorporated in the contract. But then again, when things are subjective, I am not too happy about it. So be careful with this one. Let's look at the second type, the fixed price contracts. Most common, most preferred by buyers. The simplest one being the good old purchase order, or PO. A PO is a unilateral fixed price contract. Second thing about POs, when I say unilateral, they are signed by just the buyer. Second thing, you use PO for things that you can easily obtain. Third thing, POs can be easily set up, and with little time, you can get a PO set up and we're in business. The second type is called a firm fixed price, where the price of the goods or service is set from the beginning and will not change unless the scope changes. But again, we use fixed price contracts when we expect the scope not to change significantly during the course of the project. Then you have the fixed price incentive fee. When we are expecting a certain level of performance, which is very important for the project, and we need to make sure that there's an agreed upon way to measure that performance, so we can give an extra to the seller. Then there's a fixed price with economic price adjustments. This allows for special provisions in situations where we expect economic changes like inflation, price changes, exchange rates to fluctuate or to change. And usually when the execution period of the contract is long. And such contracts, the source of the economic information will be stated in the contract. It could be the bank of your country, or Bloomberg, or some financial or economic source. Then we have the last type, which is the time and material contracts. Time and material contracts are a hybrid, a mixture of cost plus and fixed price. We use these contracts when the statement of work is not well known, when we want to get experts, when we want to get extra staff, when we want to get external support. Now, contracts have different components, the most important being the statement of work. We should describe the work in detail, like I said. Also, the delivery date and schedule, the identification of authority where appropriate, the responsibilities of both the seller and the buyer, how we're going to manage technical aspects or business aspects, price, payment terms, termination clauses, guarantees and warranties, intellectual property rights, security, confidentiality, data, privacy. What are we going to do if we want to change the contracts, and so on? What do we do in cases of force majeure or unforeseeable or unplanned or natural events that we cannot control? Force majeure. So these are some of the major aspects or major components of a contract. Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for spending time in this very useful topic about resource planning. I hope to see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.